Hello, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Danielle. I am with No Violence for Kids Canada, and this is my YouTube project to help answer call to action number 6 to repeal Section 43 of the Criminal Code of Canada to end legal corporal punishment against children. And I hope that you have been looking at my videos and stopping by. And today I'm very excited to finally meet Julie Worley. Julie and I met a while ago on Twitter. So we're going to have a conversation about what's going on down in Tennessee. But before we do that, I want to acknowledge that I am here on the land of the Kwantlen Nation, and the Kwantlen Nation has been taking care of this land and being wonderful stewards of this land from time immemorial, forever before me. And I'm very grateful for that. And I believe in their truth. And because I believe in their truth, I work really hard towards reconciliation. And the way that I do that is I spend a lot of my time in spare time working to get an answer for call to action number 6. And I hope you'll join me by liking, commenting, and subscribing to my video channel. But also you can find me at No Violence for Kids Canada on Facebook, as well as on Twitter as Pickle Tinker. So let's get started today. We're going to be talking to Julie. Let me bring her in. Let's see if I know how to do this. Here is Julie Worley. Hi.
Hi.
So good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to finally meet you. And so everyone out there, Julie is from Tennessee. She is a children's advocate. Been speaking up for a really long time to end
15 years.
15 years.
Yes.
And how about you give us a little bio? Tell us what you've been doing for 15 years as a child.
I will. Okay. Well, my husband and I moved from Southern California to Tennessee back in 2006. And when we moved here and enrolled our children in the public schools, we live in a small rural community of about 8,000 people. We found out that they had corporal punishment. I had never heard the term. I did not know what it meant. And in the children's student discipline policy, it said something about not striking the child in the face. And I thought, oh my goodness. I showed it to my husband. I said, they hit kids here. I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. So we thought, well, that's never going to happen. Our kids are they're good kids. You know, they're not mischief. They follow orders, etc. Well, the day did come in 2008. We'd been here for 2 years, and my son was 13 years old in middle school in the 8th grade. And it was a Friday afternoon. I was on my way to pick him up and a couple other kids that rode with us to school. And I got a telephone call from the principal, and she said, do I have your permission to paddle your son? And I said, no, we don't hit our children. I said, no, that you'll have to discipline him some other way. We don't hit our children. And they don't usually call the parent to ask. It's just that my son said, you can't do that. You need to call my parents. So they did, and I was able to say, no, we don't do that, because it would have caused irreparable harm to the relationship of the bond of love and trust that we have worked so hard to establish with our children. Even my other children, my 2 other younger children, would have been harmed by that if I had let that person hit my child with a wooden board as punishment. And apparently he was told to stay in during, it's kind of like recess. They go outside for some free time. It's supervised. And he was told to stay in for whatever reason. And he went out with his class. And that's why they were going to paddle him. So anyway, they found another way to discipline him. And my husband and I were sitting in the principal's office the very next morning. And we told them, that we don't hit our children. And they pulled out the student handbook page that they require that you sign at the beginning of the year. And that, in their mind, is permission to hit your child if they're not following the orders or whatever, or if they break any other rule. Mm-hmm. But they don't even need that. State law here in Tennessee basically says any teacher or school principal may use corporal punishment in a reasonable manner against any pupil for good cause in order to maintain discipline and order within the public schools. And that's it. They
for
do
good
not
cause.
Yeah. They don't tell you what's reasonable, And I had never seen a school spanking paddle. Some of them are quite large. They're thick. Oh. They have holes sometimes drilled in. There's no standard safety measures. There's no way. How do you regulate safely hitting a child? It's impossible. So anyway, the state law here, it does not require parental consent. It does not require that you notify the parent. This can be done without your knowledge and your consent. And that was a rude awakening. And I was so upset about it. I got on the internet to research it. I wanted to contact, the governor and my lawmakers and tell them about this, that this is happening. And I found the group Tennesseans for Nonviolent School Discipline, and they were having a meeting. So I drove down and met everyone in the Nashville area. I live about an hour and a half northwest of Nashville, very close to Kentucky. And these are a group of professional people that were medical people that have been working for years to try to ban corporal punishment. And it is such a difficult prospect. It's mostly political. And they were trying to come at it from a medical standpoint, how harmful this is to children. And they were just meeting obstacles. And what they wanted to do was try to make it so difficult, well, you have to jump through all these hoops to do this to a child that the schools would just give up. And it's really almost to that point where they're doing it school district by school district. It's just incredibly hard to get them to stop. The thing is, not that they use it so much, but like here in Tennessee, most of the school districts do have corporal punishment in their student discipline book, even though they might not use it all that much. But the few times that they do, it's kind of predictable that there are going to be injuries and trauma to the children.
Right.
And, this is a person that's usually 2 or 3 times the size of the child. It can be anywhere from pre-K through 12th grade that these children are being struck with a wooden board by their teacher or their educator. Then they have to go back into the classroom and they're all red and crying. They've just been assaulted, basically. It's child assault. It's legal child.
It's premeditated assault.
It absolutely is. It's, if you did that in public to, your neighbor and the police were driving by, you could be arrested for felony assault with a weapon, a deadly weapon. That you can't take one of those spanking paddles into a state capitol or the United States Supreme Court building. It's deemed a deadly weapon. Yeah, I don't think you can even carry it on an airplane if they see you. You can't, but you can use it in a public school to hit a child and call it discipline. And anyway, it's a long, hard road. And when a child is injured, sometimes the right thing to do is to take your child to the local medical, to your doctor or whatever, and get those injuries documented. There quite often it's deep bruising and that sort of thing. Get that documented and then take and file a police report and notify your school board. And it also helps to go to the news media and share that information. And there have been so many times, I've seen it happen so many times, where the parents go to the news media and they've done all the contacting the police and the school district, and they've documented the injuries with the medical professionals. And even in that instance, sometimes the educator will be arrested and there will be a felony assault charge or child abuse charge. And then they'll say, oh, the law allows it. These teachers have immunity. These educators, these principals, these people who work in a school have immunity. So they drop all the criminal charges. And then you can bring a lawsuit. But even then, the lawsuits are usually, nothing comes of it. They usually side with the school district because the law allows it. And we just can't seem to get our politicians, our lawmakers, on board with the idea that this is not only harmful to the children, they're getting injured and traumatized, and the families never even get an apology. They're up there crying in front of the school board about their child being assaulted, and they don't even get an apology. And it harms the educator. They've got that mark that, and usually they get it expunged from their file. I mean, it's just outrageous that they don't face any kind of consequence.
There's a full sanction around these educators, right? There's
but still
protection.
But it's something that they're going through as well. So it's not a positive thing.
No.
And then, people do try to sue. They file federal civil lawsuits for civil rights violation against the children. And the thing is too, school district liability insurance will not cover a lawsuit in the event of school paddling, because it's a deliberate violent act to hit a child with a wooden board. You're assaulting that child, and it's done deliberately.
Yeah.
So it's not covered by school district insurance. But like I said, the criminal and civil charges usually end up going nowhere.
Yeah.
I've seen it, but it's so rare. There was a case not too long ago in California where I think they were second grade students, twin little boys, were physically, I think they had disabilities, and they were physically injured by the school staff, and they were awarded $45 million. But someplace down in the South here, that's unheard of. You get no consequences.
Yeah.
Other than it's just all negative outcomes all the way around. There's not one positive justification or a positive outcome from doing that. It's not good. And the same children are paddled over and over again. It's not effective.
My goodness, I never thought about that.
Yes.
Oh,
and
really? Yeah.
I've seen some cases that are just very upsetting. Even a teenage girl in Arkansas recently was paddled, I think it was by a teacher, and I don't know if the teacher was a male, but she had deep bruising on her behind and went to the news media, and there's nothing they can do about it, and they haven't changed the law. So that's the kind of thing that happens here, and parents are left with no recourse. There's not anything they can do about it. Well, that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, I can really hear your passion, and I'm so glad that you're there and speaking up and helping these parents have some belonging in this conversation. So tell me a little bit more about the Tennesseans for Nonviolent School Discipline. Tell me more about this organization and what they do.
Well, basically, they did have this website. It hasn't been kept up since basically I joined, and I don't have that kind of expertise. My major contribution is I research what's happening to see incidents related to this, or research, or that anything related to it, and send it to people that I think would benefit from that information. I try to hold
from that.
Yes, I try to hold people's feet to the fire. I want the accountable to be held accountable. The people who should be the responsible parties. I want them to know that we're watching and we know what's happening, and we're making noise about it. We're raising awareness, and we're demanding accountability. Even though it's a slow process, I do believe it'll happen. It's inevitable, but it's the right thing to do. And everyone knows that it's harmful to children, and those harmful experiences create problems later in their lives, and we all end up paying for it. So it just makes good sense to end it. We're going to get there. But anyway, the organization, I have a fellow advocate named Tom Johnson, and once in a while we have gone to different school board meetings. We've traveled. We've been down to Georgia. We've been up to Kentucky. Oh. Yeah. And he's gone to East Tennessee. He's gone to several, actually. He's been involved for years before I came along. And we're communicators. We basically send emails and tweets. Yeah. And he does postings on Facebook and reaches out to people there.
Oh, I should connect. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's the kind of thing that we do. But like I said, our website's not really kept up to date. But my Twitter account, yes, I'm quite active on that. But it's not exclusive to corporal punishment. But I do a lot of corporal punishment. And I reach out to people I think are interested if I see anything that might concern them.
Right. I can't say enough about the importance of what you're doing. So raising awareness, being consistent, you're staying in the fight. This is daunting. What you're describing. The topic is sensitive. It's gross. I know from my own experience being, working, trying to talk about this repeal for years, and I'm pretty new to it compared to kind of legends that have been trying to do this for 30 years, right?
Oh yeah, there are people that were before us.
I know, it's incredible. And you think about like the topic, we're not really advocating, to grow more flowers. This is a topic that you're constantly exposed to, this disgusting behavior.
It's violence. It's violence against children, and it's government sanctioned. Yes, that is so shocking that America, we go around telling other nations, how to be, more proactive for human rights or civil rights or whatever. And here we are. This is how we treat our children in our public schools.
Public schools.
Yes, and it's based on zip codes. It's based on where you live. Like they don't do this in Nashville. They haven't done it for decades in Nashville. It's so unfair. There are two Americas.
Tell me more about the two Americas.
The two Americas. This is a non-issue. Like I said, when I moved here, I was raised in Southern California. I went to school there. I never heard the term corporal punishment. Did not know what it was. I had to look it up. And here it was I found out it was going to happen to my children, possibly. And I wasn't too concerned about it, but when it did happen, when it was about to happen, I said, whoa, wait a minute. No, we're not going to do that. We don't hit our kids. And that's just it. I know we're not the only people raising children without hitting them. There are others.
Oh, yeah.
And, our children are our future. We need to treat them with respect. And respect is so important. It's mutual. You can't just get respect by hitting a child or making them afraid of you. That's not respect. Wow. That's fear. So,
and I think that's a really important point, right? That
confusion
between fear and respect is super common. I notice it too in like those more fundamentalist things, like the confusion. And I think it's more of like some ideology that's confused respect and fear and power, those dynamics. Right. And it's so archaic to understand that. It's when we know now, like those are not the same thing, as well as we know that modeling. Right. So you want respect, then
you got to give it.
Show it.
Right. And
you want your kids to feel safe, then be safe. Like it's really that obvious, but the holding on to the power.
Right. It's about power.
It's so much about power, I'm thinking.
That's like they talk about, how rape isn't about sex. Well, the same with this paddling. That's not really discipline. This is about power. And
it's about power for sure. So it's interesting to think about the two different United States. The United States and Canada are different. You're in a republic, we're in a federation. And, so it makes it easier for us actually to change a law because our federation is more federal. So by changing the federal law, that will initiate and enshrine provincial laws. We'll have to follow those. So that will rule over. Whereas in the States, from my understanding, you can have a federal law, but things around marriage and, any sort of, I guess it'd be the corrective force with the policing, where this law might fall under, or does it fall under assault in the States? So where does
children do not have legal protections against assault in the United States? Not in our, like I said, this is government sanctioned violence against children in schools. So animals do. Trump signed a law that animal cruelty is a federal felony.
Oh, that's great that Trump did something like that.
Yeah, he did. But
it's 1 point. Just one.
Yeah.
That's a point.
But like I said, children can be assaulted and there's no limit.
Yeah.
As long as the child isn't dead, then they
I guess I just feel ill just thinking about, your experience. I can't even. I can't either. My kids, I just can't even imagine.
I can't imagine it either if they would have done that to my child, So I said, no, not everyone gets that opportunity.
How do they don't promise these parents that are experiencing this? Where do they get support? To me, I would need clinical support. My family would need clinical support after that experience. It would be life-changing.
They seek legal counsel, and even with that, they try to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court and it gets rejected. It is outrageous.
I'm so sorry to all those families out there in America.
I am too. They have suffered.
All those moms out there and all those dads out there that come home one day that find out that their kids have been beaten by a teacher with a weapon.
That's right.
I am so sorry that we're not loud enough to change this for you. We are going to keep doing that. And so sad to hear that this is happening. And it makes so much sense why the United States is so ridden in violence. Because
Absolutely.
We know. I mean, if you watch my video channel, you'll go down and scroll down, you'll see a video with Sven Fuchs from Germany. He did a whole presentation and he did research looking at dictators and terrorists and extremists and looked at their childhood, and every single one of them had been hit by an adult. Right.
Yes.
So what we're doing, what the United States is doing, and Canada, I would say, is partially doing that because there are sanctions, legal sanctions to hit kids. So we're working on that here. But we would never, it would be in the news all over if a teacher used a weapon, a paddle on a child here. So it definitely is. We are, a little bit more safe, not better. I don't want to say better because there should be zero. There's zero tolerance for this ever. But when we think about what's going on in the States, the number one killer in the States right now, children are dying. The number one reason isn't because of accidents. It's not because of, illness. It is because the children are being shot in schools. Gun violence. And so gun violence is the number one reason children are dying in the United States. And this is a definite connection to how children are being treated. Could you talk more, because you're living down there? Tell me and relate with me here. I think I'm understanding, if you're brought up in a world of violence, you experience it, whether you're being hit or not. If and you go to school every day and you could be hit, or you are hit, or your friend is hit, all of that is normalizing the idea of violence. How does that play into the gun violence, Julie?
It does. It plays in because it affects a child's mental well-being. There's a term called ACEs. It's regarding adverse childhood experiences and how it affects a person over their lifetime. And there was a doctor here in Tennessee, Dr. Bill Frist, who wrote an article in Forbes magazine talking about how adverse childhood experiences can cut 20 years off of a lifetime. Because people that suffer trauma as a child, they've got that whole fight or flight response, and they don't process things the way most people do because they're always on alert. They don't feel safe. And so, we're doing a grave injustice to our children by not protecting them.
And society, right? And thank you so much for mentioning ACEs. That's another one of the videos, and I'll keep going back there. Part of our team at No Violence for Kids Canada is Elizabeth Perry, and she runs ACEs Canada. That's her baby, and just constantly talking about how children who experience violence are at risk for high ACEs scores, right? And the higher the ACEs scores, the more likely that children are going to end up developing mental illness.
That's right.
They're going to, addiction. They're like physical illness. There's another interview here with, love Dr. Robert Maunder. His book Damaged is all about this, recognizing how our physiological self so
there's
all
a connection.
Kinds of diseases are related to early childhood. Now we know that in science. So referring to so important. More
likely to be perpetrators or victims of violence in their dating life, or as they get older, or incarcerated, or have trouble being employed, and it just goes on and on. Right. And so what we can do, we're doing a grave disservice to our future by not protecting our children. But I will say that there is good news, that it is becoming less prevalent. The numbers are declining. And our number one state where they do this the most to children is Mississippi. And there was just an article published within the last 2 days. And it said that, I believe it was statewide, that they had used corporal punishment 4,300 times in the latest statistics. I think for a year, yeah. But that's really a decline, because just a couple of years back, Alabama had done an article and a research investigation on it, and they had used corporal punishment, I believe it was 19,000 times on the children there, and they weren't even the biggest heavy hitter, back in the day. So the 4 states that make up more than 80% of corporal punishment in schools are Mississippi's number 1, Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, and Arkansas.
Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, and Arkansas. We're calling you out.
Yes.
Did you hear that? Right,
absolutely.
Julie Worley?
That's right.
Yeah. Calling out Mississippi, Texas, Alabama, and Arkansas. I've never been down there, but I probably shouldn't go down there. I'm probably going to get in trouble. But I'll tell you, we're watching you from Canada. We're watching you.
They have some unusual cultural sayings, like when we moved here and met some of the people, and the people are just nice. They're sweet people, but they're used to, that's the way they've been brought up in this oppressive atmosphere. A lot of them are very religious, and they'll say something like, if their child comes to play at your house, well, if they give you any trouble, you can, spank them, or, you know what I mean? That's how they are. And I would never allow someone to do that to my child, or my grandchild. I watch them all the time myself. I don't trust others really too much, so not with your children.
My kids outside.
Right.
Or down there. So it must have been quite surprising, like Southern California girl coming down.
Right. It was. We moved to a farm, so we have cows and horses and chickens.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, we moved here for our children, to raise them in less congestion. We were in a busy city. We moved to a quiet little area. And I thought, well, how bad can the schools be? And the schools have been fine other than that. This whole corporal punishment thing, I'll never get over it. It has to stop. Yeah. But it's, like I said, it's getting less and less. In my very own school district here, I went at least 3 times and spoke to my school board members, and they never would make eye contact with me or respond to me in any way. But they did finally take it out of our discipline code for our district. Yes. And the sad thing is, though, most Tennessee school districts still have that. And I'll tell you, it's bizarre, but they have a State School Boards Association. And I think they required that all the school districts either have a policy about corporal punishment, either outlining it for their own district, or that they prohibit it. And so they have a template that the school districts can use. And it's so funny because all of the so many of the school districts do have a corporal punishment policy. It's like they feel like they're losing something if they don't, like you're taking something away from them, like a tool. I've heard that term, a tool in the toolkit. And, it just causes so much damage all the way around.
Tell me about the training for teachers down there. So, I'm interested. I am proud to say I'm an ambassador for the U.S. Alliance to End Hitting of Children. I'm super proud of that role. And I know that the U.S. Alliance to End Hitting Children, I think they're based out of Connecticut, New York area, is rich in resources, right? I mean, and tons of support with researchers and backed by, quite a prominent group of folks that are really knowledgeable. So what kind of education is, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas, and Alabama providing teachers, and how are teachers being trained to use positive teaching practices?
Okay. Well, I'm not a professional, but I will tell you, I'm just an advocate for children. But I think that there is no standardized sort of training. And like you said, the resources are there, they're available. If somebody really wants to know alternatives, say, to corporal punishment, they can find that information quite easily. Right. The Global Initiative to End Corporal Punishment provides several resources. They have it in different languages. It's available. Okay, but some of these states are resorting to hiring people with no education in training, or training as an educator for teaching, because there's such a shortage, and everything's kind of in a strange place right now. Our lawmakers are kind of making things so difficult. Stop and think about what our I appreciate and admire our educators. I realize how valuable they are, and the job is hard. And here we are constantly asking them to, raise our children. And not only that, but they're facing so many obstacles, like the gun violence. Now they have to do these active shooter drills. And the kids are having to dive under their desks, and they don't know if there really is a shooter or if it's just a drill. And schools are being swatted all the time with phone calls that, there's going to be a shooter, and you've got the police roaring in there, using up the resources. We're just in crazy town on everything. And so it's hard to keep teachers right now, I think, or to get people to go into teaching. So I don't think that there is a big emphasis on teacher training. But I will tell you that school spanking paddles are not available in teacher supply stores. This is not something. You don't buy a school spanking paddle at a teacher supply store.
Where do you buy that?
At a pornography site online, maybe.
And
I'll tell you, many of the paddles that are in the schools were made decades ago in somebody's shop or at the school shop.
By the students, maybe.
Yes.
And woodworking.
That's right. So, and they meet no safety standards. They a lot of times have tape on them. There was one incident, the worst one I've ever seen. It was in Texas, and it was a high school football player. And there were 7 coaching staff in the room when the coach paddled a high school football player with a taped canoe paddle, and it broke during the paddling. He got 21 licks, and the kid could barely walk. They hit him in his lower back. I mean, he was hurt, beaten. And the Dallas Independent School District, they dropped the case. So there never is justice on these. So sometimes it goes to the extreme and there's no justice. In fact, there was a case just recently, within the last 2 months in Oklahoma. There was a principal that paddled 2 fifth-grade boys. They had a verbal altercation on the playground. And he took them into his office and he had a flattened baseball bat. And he hit those 2 boys and sent them home bruised up. And the parents were, so many times parents will give permission for this. And he was charged with felony child abuse. They dropped the charges because it's allowed, even though his school district didn't necessarily allow it, which I don't know why he had the paddle there in the school to begin with, if it wasn't allowed in their district. But there was a civil lawsuit and the jury sided with the school district. They said the school district was not negligent.
No, because it's legal.
Yeah. And so they moved this man to another school. So now he's in charge of students at another school. And this is the sort of thing that happens here. It's called pass the trash. So somebody causes pass the trash.
The same thing happens here, Julie. In
Right.
fact, this is historically what they did, right? So if we look at residential schools for Indigenous,
Yes.
we don't call them schools, residential
Right.
institutions,
Right. Where
horrific
children.
centers. Yeah,
Right.
so they would, or even now when we look at, priest abuse and church abuse, priests
Right.
just get moved from one parish to another.
And
They're
corporal
literally just
punishment.
saving them up.
Yeah.
Teachers, in my own experience working in the school district, same sort of thing. Teacher would violate a child's rights, and then they just move the teacher to a new school, like it's
That's
all
right.
okay. Or they put them on leave, stress leave, so that looked like the teacher was under stress, which likely it was. But
Right.
they bring them back, and oftentimes it was worse. So it's the same sort of, I love that, pass the trash. I mean, it's not a very friendly term,
No.
but I think it's a very colonial way to avoid accountability and to continue abuse.
There is no accountability. I think we will get
Yeah,
there.
avoid
I have
it.
hope. I have to stay positive about it. But there is no accountability. There was an investigation done by the Associated Press back in the 2005, 10 in there about sexual misconduct against children in schools from educators. And the corporal punishment and sexual abuse go hand in hand. It's prevalent in the church. It always was. Corporal punishment oftentimes led to, sexual abuse by priests of children.
Mhm.
And we have other schools here too, the reform schools that they had, where they had graves on site down in Florida, Dozier School for boys. And we had Indigenous schools as well with the same sort of history. And all of that goes hand in hand, and children would be paddled for speaking their native language. And even down in Texas for speaking Spanish, So it's a crime. I believe it's a crime. And I make a lot of noise about it, and I call it what it is. It's child assault, and it's government sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we need to at least give our children the legal protections that we give to animals in America.
100%. And Canada, thank you so much for that mention, because here, same thing in Canada. So it is illegal to hit animals in Canada. It is illegal to hit inmates in Canada. It is illegal to hit a sailor, anybody. Anybody in Canada, it's illegal, not children.
That's
so
right.
Children are not considered equal citizens under our rights. They don't have the same, they're not rightful citizens. And so it's the same in the States still. I am actually a little bit physically nauseous after my last part of my week right now.
I'm sorry.
And no, I just want to thank you for this, because it's so important that we talk about it honestly and recognize that these hard conversations need to be spoken about in real time language. We're not going to make it soft. We're not going to, because no child hits softly.
Right.
That's not what this is about. This is a hard law that needs to change, and there's no revision. We're not looking for halfway. We are looking for 100%.
An end to the violence against our children. Absolutely.
100% and full legal protection.
Absolutely.
At all levels of government, at every sector.
Yeah.
So it's appalling what I'm hearing. And I know I read about it in the articles that you share, like I read them
Mhm.
and I'm just like, oh no. But to hear you describe it, it is a different experience.
It
So I'm
is.
really grateful to that you're here. Can you tell me now? You mentioned something that I want to move to because I think it's so important because this work is so dreadfully dark,
Right.
half the time that I think the longevity of activism in this work is something really special when we keep the hope. So
Absolutely.
tell me about that, Julia. Give me a little bit of your wisdom on hope there.
Well, like I said, it's
Mhm.
declining. I think that the biggest fear for educators is lawsuits. And they don't want to go through the whole thing of the lawsuits. And like I said, the act of hitting a child, it's a violent act and with a weapon. And it's deliberate, so it's not going to be covered by the school district liability insurance, even though so many
Mhm.
times criminal and civil charges are dropped because they have immunity. Sometimes there are even laws giving them qualified immunity for what I
Yeah.
don't understand, but it's to assault children. But like I said about those investigations back around 2010 in that area, we had one by the United States Government Accountability Office. The federal Government Accountability Office did an in-depth investigation into child abuse being rampant in our schools. And some children were even killed. I mean, like their teacher would sit them down on the floor to restrain them. And like one student, well, it happened to a couple of them, he died from the restraint, from having a big person sitting on him in front of his classmates. And it happened to a little girl in a cafeteria. She was blowing bubbles in her milk. I mean, it's outrageous. And those educators were moved to other schools. That's what I was saying, pass the trash. That's where I found the term. I never knew that. I mean, it's been an education for me seeing this and seeing what happens, that there's no accountability. And so many of these kids, they already come from a broken home, or they're maybe experiencing abuse or
Oh, you think
neglect.
that? Like,
And here we argue over feeding them. And how is a child going to learn anything if they're not taken care of? So anyway, we're going through some growing pains. I think that we are moving in the right direction, but it's painful.
yeah. It's what you're doing is so brave, and staying in the fight is the hardest part. I think people want to speak up about these things and they get involved and then they kind of drift away, right? It's just like, because it's pretty,
But
I
some
don't
of
know if it's
us,
a grosser topic.
yeah, some of us have the receipts. We don't forget. I don't forget. I might
We
be
got
able
it.
to forgive, but I want to see it move forward and get better for everyone, for our kids. And it's going to be better for educators and for our communities,
Oh,
because violence does beget violence. If we can get away from, treating our children that way and giving them the respect that they deserve and a good childhood, they'll go on to have a better future. And that's going to be better for all of us. And so the knowledge is there, the research backs it up, and it's common knowledge. It's becoming, they're using our words now. That's what I told my fellow advocate, Tom.
oh,
They're using our words now. I mean, we don't mince words, we call it what it is. And it's encouraging to see that we're making progress.
I hear you. So I'm hearing there's making progress because lives are starting to change. But I like what you said. You're starting to hear your language in
That's right.
lawmakers. And so
Yes.
that's a really good indicator that there is change coming. I appreciate that as well. And I really appreciate what you're saying. You're in it for the kids, but also recognizing that violence against children affects all of us in
It
society. So
does.
when kids grow up safe, our societies become safer. It's just the natural outcome of that.
That's
So
right.
when we're looking for world peace, this is definitely the topic, I think, to get
It is.
involved in, isn't it?
And a healthier environment too. Just like we're going to
Right.
get there with the gun violence too. It's very painful, but people are we're done with it. We're tired of it. We want it to stop. And we'll get through the circus that is our politics and back to what matters. It will happen. I don't know what it's going to take. Sometimes we need to get knocked down to stand back up and be stronger and come together. And I think that that's always a possibility.
Yeah. And it's alliances like this. It's knowing people like you that are out there being loud too. It really is powerful.
It makes a difference. That's what it
Makes
takes.
a difference. It really does. You're way in Tennessee. Here I am up in, British Columbia, Canada. And just, when I wake up in the morning with my coffee and I open up Twitter, I have a message from Julie, right? And it's like an article or like a thumbs up or hello. And that's been going on for a couple of years, I think. And
yes.
So I just want to, give you a moment just to say your final thoughts. And then we can close
Well,
out.
what people can do is reach out to your lawmakers, your state representatives, and your federal congressperson or your senator, and tell them how you feel about it. Tell them that you care about children and violence against children, and to please support legislation to end violence against children, especially in our schools. That's the one that I'm after. I want to see it end in the schools because it does model violence to families. And if there's been research done showing that if we ban corporal punishment, it will have a positive effect and help reduce child abuse in the communities as well. So this is something that we can achieve. So don't go ahead, reach out to those people and speak up. When you see something that's not right, it's okay to speak up. That's what it takes. Just be yourself and express your opinion. You can pick up the phone or you can contact your lawmaker online. There's usually a Find My Representative, type in your zip code, and you can send them just a short note. It doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to be a scholar or a professional or whatever. You can share your feelings on it, and it does make a difference.
It's so powerful what you're saying right now, because I think that it's so important that people recognize their opportunity to speak up and how our democracies are actually built on citizen participation. So people are like, well, the government's doing all the wrong things. It's like, yeah, but you're not participating. That's actually one of the wheels of our democracy.
Right. They count on you not paying attention, not speaking up. That's why we keep getting all this clown show as
I love that.
politics.
But your last words, I hear you, Julie. Let's speak up. Let's stay making connections. Building relationships is valuable. Relational activism is really powerful to form communities around these issues.
Don't be afraid to talk to your child's educators as well. We have this going on, and it's legal in 19 states. I don't think it's practiced very much. Like I said, there are the 4 states that do it the most. It's Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas. But there are other states where it is legal. So if you don't want that done to your child, make it clear. You can write a little note on your child's discipline policy for the student handbook that you are required to send back in at the beginning of the school year. Put on there, do not hit my child, or no corporal punishment. Do not paddle or spank or hit my child.
The fact that you have to write that down is
I have done that.
Right. So thank you so much, Julie. This is a very important conversation. Maybe we'll talk again about, I think there might be a lot more conversation here. I'm coming up with a lot of questions, and also so important to talk more about how we can be active. Thank you everyone who's watched. I don't think we've had any real live viewers yet. My channel's kind of new. However, I'll keep it live I'll keep it on my channel so that people can visit.
Thank you.
I can't say enough. So Julie, just hang around. I'll end our studio. So thank you, everybody. Please like, comment, and share, and subscribe to our channel, and visit Julie at forkidssake.org, or find Julie on Twitter at no2hitting. And you can find me on Twitter at Pickle Tinker. Help us retweet things, because we have to get loud, and we also just need to get really loud. So
that does help.
It does help. It does.
Social media is the best.
It is so much fun too. Okay,
yes,
here we go.